Epstein update just emerged, and it puts on full display just how panicked this White House is about how to deal with this scandal.
Another question on something that happened yesterday, but I wanted to get the White House response. A judge ruled that the grand jury transcripts in Ghislaine Maxwell's case should not be released. What's the White House response to that? And you plan to appeal, and what do you tell President Trump supporters who want that information, please?
We think that decision is unfortunate. Of course, we moved to unseal that information because the president has said he wants to see credible evidence released. As for the appeal process, I would defer you to the Department of Justice for that.
Let me make one thing abundantly clear. The White House literally has all of the Epstein files at their disposal. If they want them released, they would simply release them. The White House does not need the grand jury testimonies because they have the summaries of all of those testimonies, as well as thousands upon thousands of additional materials on their desks right now. Any suggestion that the White House is, quote, disappointed with a judge refusing to unseal grand jury testimony is them playing pretend and feigning disappointment because they think their supporters are stupid. The truth is that the reason that the judge didn't approve the release of the grand jury testimony is because the judge wasn't authorized to do so. There are strict and specific rules as to when grand jury testimonies can be released based on grand jury secrecy rules. This situation didn't satisfy those requirements, but more importantly, Pam Bondi and Donald Trump knew that they wouldn't satisfy those requirements. The point wasn't to get anything released. The point was expressly not to get anything released. And so they embarked on this fool's errand solely to be able to say what they are saying right now, what Caroline Leavitt just said today, which is this make-believe sob story that she and the White House definitely, totally wanted transparency, but it was those evil communist Marxist Democrat judges who are clearly preventing you from seeing the truth. The whole thing is a sham. In fact, the sham is so obvious that the judge literally pointed it out in his ruling. Judge Paul Engelmeyer said, quote, a member of the public appreciating that the Maxwell grand jury materials do not contribute anything to the public knowledge might conclude that the government's motion for their unsealing was aimed not at transparency, but at diversion, aimed not at full disclosure, but at the illusion of such. I asked Mark Elias for his response to that claim. Here's what he had to say.
The judge called it straight up what happened here, which is that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and who the hell knows who else in that administration, decided they'd try to pull a fast one up the American public. They'd say, we're going to move to have the grand jury transcripts released, knowing full well that those transcripts do not contain much at all, which is, by the way, not unusual in our system. Prosecutors tend to only put before the grand jury the minimum amount of information and evidence necessary to get an indictment. So they may collect, 5,000 boxes of documents, but they'll only put before the grand jury, one or two witnesses that talk about 3 or 4 of the documents. So this was always a setup, and it is great to see a federal judge calling it out as such. It's also, though, important to recognize that Donald Trump could still release the Epstein files, right? So This judge said they're not going to release the grand jury transcripts, which are subject to grand jury secrecy, and as the judge points out, in this case, wouldn't be illuminating, but that wouldn't prevent the Department of Justice from releasing, I imagine, just an enormous avalanche of other materials that they have that are not covered by those rules.
Of which the summaries from these grand jury testimonies are included, right? And so if they really wanted transparency as it relates to these grand jury testimonies, which are just a small fraction, maybe 5%, 10% of what's included in the broader tranche of Epstein files, if they really wanted that stuff released, they already have summaries of it at their disposal, don't they?
Well, they have better than that. I mean, essentially, the way that criminal investigations work in terms of witness testimony is that FBI agents interview a lot of people, right? They interview every witness, every potential witness. They chase down leads. They collect documents, right? They are out doing the spade work of figuring out who did what to who and how and who might have seen what. And they do that. And all of those interviews get recorded. They get written up as summary interviews. Okay. So there is a summary of every interview that gets written up. You sometimes hear the term FBI 302. That's what these are called. That's the form number that these things are written up on. And ultimately, the prosecutors and the FBI agents go through all of the mountain of information that they gather in those interview summaries, and then they decide what is it that we actually need the grand jury to hear. And so sometimes they may hear a little piece from one or two witnesses who were interviewed for hours, right? They may have been interviewed for 8 hours. So there's a witness interview summary that can go on for pages upon pages upon pages. And then they'll be like, okay, well, let's just take that witness and put them in the grand jury for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or for an hour to just provide a portion of that testimony for the grand jury. Sometimes they don't even put the witness in. They'll just put the FBI agent in. Say, I conducted this investigation. I interviewed all these people, and this is basically what I found. But those raw summaries of interviews are where all of the information that you'd want to know about who is in the Epstein files, right? Because that is the FBI collecting all of the information. So when we talk about the Epstein files, one of the big tranches of information are these summaries of interviews conducted by FBI agents, written down by FBI agents. And none of that, to be clear, none of it is protected by grand jury secrecy rules. All of it is at the fingertips of Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi. Okay, they literally could press a button on their computer and it would just all appear. Okay, and the fact that they are not releasing those tells you everything you need to know about what's in there.
And of course, to watch more coverage between myself and Mark Elias, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. It's a great way to support our work, and it is completely free. In other words, the Trump team here is literally playing you, and it's not even a surprise. I mean, guys, we don't have to sit here and pretend that we don't know why they are bending over backwards not to release the files. It's because Trump is in them. That's it. It's not a surprise. It's not even a secret. His own attorney general told him months ago that he was in there, and as a result, they will do everything in their power to prevent the files release. This isn't about accountability for the Epstein accomplices. This is about protecting them. Trump came into office promising to expose them, and instead he is entrenching the very system that he swore to dismantle. You all believed him when he said that he would release those files, and instead, you elected a guy who has the biggest vested interest in the world in ensuring that they never see the light of day. So here's what I'm asking of you, and I don't care if you're left, right, or center. I don't care if you voted for Trump. I don't care if you didn't even show up on election day. When the Trump administration plays you for fools and pretends that they're super duper bummed that a judge wouldn't do what they always knew a judge couldn't do with regard to releasing these random grand jury transcripts, do not be fooled. They don't want accountability or transparency. They want secrecy. Remember, there is one group of human beings on Earth who could release the documents today, and they just so happen to be the same people pretending that they want transparency while refusing to lift a finger to actually give it to us. They can release the files, they should release the files, and in fact, given the subpoena issued by Congress, they will release the files. And just know that when it came time for them to be true to their word, these administration officials decided to treat you like absolute fools to your faces because that's just how stupid, dim, and gullible they thought you were. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Republicans might say that they hate Democrats, but there is no one they have more contempt for than their own voters. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.